Well, go ahead and start.
Welcome to the MMA Ratings Podcast, where myself and Raphael Garcia will talk about all the MMA ongoings this week. It's been a busy fight week with UFC 175, World Series, the Fighting 11, and tonight's The Ultimate Fighter finale. So let's get right into it. What did you think of the World Series of Fighting card last night, Raphael?
Um, that's definitely a good place to start. I was rooting for the underdog. I wanted Nick to win, of course, obviously, but he was in a bad position with Justin from the very start. So I'm not too surprised at how that fight ended up, but I would like to see what's next for both Nick and for Justin as well.
Yeah, that to me that fight was interesting. Nick Newell in the first round, he definitely held his own. His striking was very impressive. His overall performance in the first round was very impressive. But what let him down, in my opinion, was his cardio. And I didn't expect it to go that way, but he seemed from the end of the first round onward, he seemed to gas out. Obviously, for fighters who are able-bodied, gassing out is bad. But when your hands are dropping and you already have you're lacking an arm for want of a better phrase. But he obviously had no way to defend himself on that side, and he got caught plenty of times with hooks on that side. Excuse me.
Well, now go ahead. Like one thing that kind of like this was only his. I want to say maybe.
Hello.
Roy?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, sorry about that. What I was saying is that I think this is what his second fight that went out of the first round, maybe.
Yeah.
I know he had one decision before this, but I wasn't too surprised with him running out of steam that early in the fight. I figured he would be a little bit more prepared, but yeah, seeing him run out of gas that early is a sad way for him to go out. Like as you were saying, especially with him already being at a disadvantage. So it'll be tough for him to kind of come back from that situation. I don't think I'm not going to say he's one and done. I think he can definitely build his way back up to a solid position, but he's going to have to deal with those cardio issues with the disadvantage that he already has. He's going to have to find a way to kind of deal with that.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a few things that need to be looked at. Nick Newell's obviously talented, but Justin Gaethje is a very, very talented guy. I think Nick Newell has a bright future. You know, the guy is definitely talented, and as does Justin. But overall, it kind of went how a lot of people expected it to go. A lot of people rooted for the underdog, but it just wasn't Newell's night. Um, as well as Newell's performance on the World Series of Fighting card, a lot of people were looking forward to see how John Fitch would bounce back from his rather lackluster performance in his last fight. In facing Dennis Hallman, he put on a really good performance, in my opinion, and it was really like vintage Fitch back.
Yeah, that's very true. I've always been a fan of his, and even though people never really appreciated the way he fought when he was on his run in UFC, it's very effective. How how well do you think he would have done against? Wasn't this original fight playing for Jake Shields, right?
Originally, it was I think it went Palhares, then it was Jake Shields. Yeah.
Yeah, and wasn't
I
Berkman
think
stepping too?
Berkman was somewhere around. You know, it was a lot of switching around. But to me, like, I think John Fitch, he causes Palhares a lot of trouble. I don't think he gets caught in a heel hook, and I know his top game is pretty solid, and Palhares' gas is obviously questionable, whereas Fitch's really isn't. Jake Shields, I think would have an advantage. I've watched grappling footage of Jake Shields and John Fitch, and Jake Shields got the upper hand. I know apparently they were tied 1-1 in grappling matches, but from the grappling footage I've seen, Jake Shields is much more assured in the grappling department. I think maybe that fight would end up as a sloppy kickboxing bout, but yeah, I think John Fitch could take Jake Shields. I think he definitely beats Palhares, and I also think he beats Berkman in a rematch.
I would want to see the Berkman rematch first. I think with the way their second fight ended, and with I don't know if you heard Fitch's interview on Sherdog earlier this week, but he was talking about how he was kind of looking past that fight to already to seeing the welterweight title at that time. So he made that mistake and he got choked out. Like it's almost like a minute or something like that, minute 30. So that was his fault. But if he is looking at the fight with Berkman. I think that would definitely be something I would watch next. I still want to see him fight Jake Shields. That's something I've always wanted to see, and I agree with you. I would lean towards Jake as well, just because he's the bigger fighter in that situation. And when it comes to Paul Harris, you just never really know once he gets a hold of someone's leg or something like that. But I think that Fitch is also smart enough to kind of stay away from that position. He's not going to make that same mistake that Steve Carl made when Paul Harris won the belt a couple months back.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I think the World Series fighting's most stacked division is the welterweight division. There's certainly some interesting matchups to be made. Um, Melvin Gillard made his debut at the World Series of Fighting last night, which was very interesting. I've long been a fan of Melvin Gillard, and he's never really lived up to his potential. I was very disappointed to see that he missed weight for his debut, but the performance he put in against Cavalcante was somewhat impressive. I'm very interested to see what he does in his next appearance.
Yeah, he's another guy who I listened to talk this week. Did you hear about him saying he wants to drop the featherweight too as well? Did you hear about this?
Oh, wow. No, I didn't hear about that.
Yeah, like I thought it was funny when I heard it, but to see him turn around and miss weight like 2 days later after he said it was like kind of ridiculous. But yeah, I agree with you. He's someone that I've always enjoyed watching. I wish he could have always been able to put it together, especially when he was on that run towards the end of his UFC time before he went on that 4 fight losing streak. I definitely would have enjoyed seeing him go on more of a run myself. But he looked good last night against Jay-Z. Cavalcante is someone who has always been like in the middle of the pack. He did pretty well in Strike Force. I don't think he had any fights in the Octagon before coming over to World Series. So that was a pretty good test for Melvin coming into the group. Do you think he should get a direct shot at Justin next?
Yeah, I think really as a test to see where Justin is, I think Melvin Gillard is the way to go. But the only thing that I would be wary of from a World Series fighting standpoint is if they put Gillard in against Justin and Gillard knocks him out, it kind of discredits their organization because Justin really is your most dominant fighter, and if a guy who's been cut by the UFC puts him away, it looks bad on the brand in general. So I have a feeling that maybe World Series will give Gillard maybe another fight beforehand, but I'm very interested to see what goes on there.
What's left? Who else is there for Justin? I could see them giving Melvin like maybe 1 or 2 fights and kind of build that up towards the end of this year. But what else is left for Justin to do? Like there aren't too many guys left within their lightweight group yet. I think that that's the next group that they're trying to build up, but right now there aren't too many other fights in the make.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point. Just looking now at the World Series of the Fighting roster, I can't really see anyone that sticks out as a good fight. You know, Dan Lozon's 1-1. You know, no one really wants to see that. There's Jacob Volkman. There's Tyson Griffin, who's lost twice in a row. You know, there's not a lot of people there. You know, I can't really see what World Series of Fighting would be looking toward for Justin. And I can't see himself what Justin's looking for in World Series of Fighting. Obviously, the World Series of Fighting have shown some openness toward letting their fighters sign for the UFC. And with Justin at 5-0 inside the organization, maybe the UFC will come knocking now.
Yeah, at 12-0, he's someone I would definitely like to see in the octagon. How well do you think he does? I really liked him from the very jump. He's someone that has kind of interested me to see what he would do. How old is he actually? Now that I see him think about it,
25.
I know he's not. Yeah, so he's still relatively young. So I think that I don't think they're going to start making a call for him right now, especially seeing how their division is already kind of packed and they don't have too much movement with Anthony Pettis and Gilbert Melendez not going to fight until December or October, something like that of this year. So I think that they kind of avoid bringing him in so soon. But if he keeps doing what he's doing, I wouldn't be surprised if he was there by the end of next year.
Yeah, I agree. Moving swiftly on toward UFC 175, the first thing that stuck out to me on that card was Kevin Casey v. Bubba Bush. Kevin Casey comes from a great lineage. You know, he's a Hickson Gracie black belt, and his father-in-law is Muhammad Ali. So you know that guy's been around some great athletes in his time. He came out, you know, in his first in the UFC, he was very lackluster, but he seems to shore up his weaknesses, and he came back with a beautiful TKO knockout of Bubba Bush in the first round.
Yeah, he was on. What season tough was it? Was it the one with Forrest and Clinton?
I think it was the John Jones Chael Sonnen, if I remember correctly.
Okay, okay. But I know he was on a season of Tough that didn't go so well for him. But it was good to see him back. I was excited to see that he had this fight signed, especially right after he won that RFA title not too long ago. So I'm not surprised that he got the win there in the opening fight. I had him picked. I didn't think it was going to go the way it did, but he's someone who is worth keeping an eye out on. I know a lot of people were giving him a hard time when he stepped in to face Keenan Cornelius at Metamoris 3 and got like heel hooked in almost like what 15 minutes or something like that.
Hmm.
So, that was kind of like the last time anybody had really saw him, but he's really turned it around when it comes to the MMA standpoint.
Yeah, well, as we know, Keenan Cornelius is a beast. Getting submitted by Keenan Cornelius isn't right. Isn't anything to be ashamed of. I think Kevin Casey, he showed in his tough career and even in his fight against Josh Salmon after the tough finale, he usually just expended too much energy. He'd hurt his opponent and go straight in for the kill, and then end up gassing out himself. And that happened against Salmon. And I think since then he's kind of learned how to pace himself a bit more. He had the fight with Casey Ryan at RFA 9 where he went to decision. He showed he had a bit more gas. I know since then, obviously, he's got 3 first-round knockouts, but I think he's improved more as a fighter, and he's beginning to channel his aggression into more composed performances.
You know what? I'm sorry, I had my mic on mute. I was just trying to ask you a ridiculous question. All right, so I was asking you a question about George Root. What do you think will happen next with him? Does he stay with the organization? Does he stay at 135? Does he go back up to the featherweight? We've talked about him a couple of times in the past, and I think that this continued cut is going to really hamper him long term.
Yeah, I think Nathan Marquardt made an interesting quote in recent weeks. He said when he cut down to welterweight, he felt that his chin started to give and he started to get knocked out easier than he would have when he was up at his more natural middleweight. And I think that's the case with George Roop as well. You know, Francisco Rivera TKO'd him, Cub Swanson TKO'd him, and even as again last night, Rob Font completely knocked him out. So I think maybe a move back up might benefit him. But again, if anyone in that division gets hit by the punch that Rob Font threw last night, I think anyone goes to sleep.
It was definitely a clean shot, and I'm not surprised that he went out the way he did. I'm just still concerned over him going so far to make weight. I mean, like I said, he's 6'1". He weighs 135 pounds. I don't understand how. Is he working with Mike at all? How is he doing this on a regular basis?
It can't be good for him. For a guy 6'1" to be weighing in at 135 is just ridiculous. His lean body mass must be at most about 145 pounds. So after that, he just dehydrates himself down. It can't be good for his long-term health, and obviously it's not good for his fighting style. He once said that he wanted to be the bantamweight John Jones. Well, John Jones's reach doesn't make John Jones the fighter; it's his skill, and that's something that Roop's lacking. I think he should just stay at featherweight or move back up to featherweight where he had a better chance.
So here's my thing though: if he goes back up to featherweight, is he still effective there? I don't think he really has any success at 145 either. That's kind of the reason why he did drop down. I mean, who does he beat at featherweight?
Well, that's a good point. I think one of the main problems is with him at the moment is his confidence. Even in performances he's winning, he's been somewhat tentative, and I think what might be best for him is a spell away from the octagon, maybe to pick up a few fights in somewhere like Legacy. Same as Leonard Garcia is doing at the moment. Leonard Garcia, he was getting tentative toward the end of his UFC career. Now he's knocking guys out, finishing guys out in Legacy. So I think it might be worth George Roop's while taking a break from the octagon to hone his skills and come back rejuvenated.
I can agree with that. That's not a a bad call at all there, Roy. So let's talk about Chris Camozzi and Bruno Santos. Who did you have winning this fight?
Bruno Santos. And you know what? I think Chris Camozzi needs to watch the fight again and realize that if you're on your back, it's your duty as a fighter to get back up. You can't complain that guy is taking you down. It reminded me so much of Nurmagomedov v. Abel Trujillo. You know, if you're getting taken down, it's your duty as a fighter to stand back up or look for submission from your guard. Look for a sweep. Don't just sit there and pity yourself for being in that position in the first place. Because at the end of the day, it's your own fault for being in that position.
But what do you think about guys like T.J. Wahlberger who kind of fight that same style too? Was Chris as active as him off the back, or is that man? This is hard for me because I'm always one of those guys who kind of look at what a guy is doing off of his back or not. Is he putting his opponent in a dangerous position? And while I'm not going to say that Chris was, I still don't think that just being taken down is enough to kind of determine if you're going to lose the fight or not.
I think, Chris Camozzi has to be offensive. I know Bruno Santos has to be offensive too, but in MMA, the guard shouldn't be in a neutral position, in my opinion. If you're on your back and you're not doing anything, it's not neutral. You're being held on the ground. You're already on the defensive for somewhat. I think, there's no excuse for him not to even explore submissions from his guard or even look toward a sweep. He just held on and complained. There was no real active concerted effort to get back to his feet or go for a submission, and I don't think you can complain that you're stuck on your back.
So what do you think is next for both Chris and Bruno? Do you think Chris stays around with the company? I know he's struggled as of late. So is he someone that is worth keeping on roster? I kind of think he is. I think he's one of those gatekeeper type roles, like a Cole Miller, for example. But I wouldn't be surprised if they did cut him from the group.
I think he has something for the organization. He's had some good fights, but his attitude, I think, was lacking a bit last night, and that's what I don't like to see. The thing is, he just has to look toward, not making excuses, and actually say, look, on the night I got bet by the better man. I need to go back and I need to address my takedown defense. I need to address my guard game, and I'll come back stronger. Instead of saying, oh, I lost because the other guy wasn't doing anything. The guy was doing something. The guy was taking you down time after time and sitting on you, pretty much.
Yeah, that definitely sucks to see. I'm still mad about the win that Clay Guida got over Hasazioki, I think last year or the year before, when it was basically a takedown and lay in the guy's guard. So I'm still kind of salty about that one, but I definitely agree with you.
I have no problem. If someone's in their guard and they're active, looking up for triangles and everything, like when Anthony Pettis fought Clay Guida, I thought Anthony Pettis won that fight because for the whole fight, Anthony Pettis was treading off his back looking for arm bars and triangles, whereas Clay Guida did nothing. And the same with Hatsu Hayoki. You definitely win a fight if you're more active off your guard, if you're looking for submissions and looking for sweeps, and the other fighter is just trying to hold you down. The thing is, last night, Chris Camozzi really wasn't looking for anything special.
So do you think he gets cut or not?
I think he gets cut.
Okay, I can't be too mad at that. I wouldn't be surprised at all. This is his third loss in a row, so I wouldn't be too shocked if they sent him away from the group. So, what did you think about the Kenny Robertson fight as well?
Sorry, what fight? I didn't hear you there. You broke up.
The Kenny Robertson fight?
Kenny Robertson, yeah, he got my submission of the year for last year. He's a very, very short grappler. His fight with Brock Jardine, I think it was. No, yeah, Brock Jardine last year got my submission of the year. And I think he's a very accomplished grappler, and I think he put in a decent enough performance last night. I think his opponent Alcantara is also a great fighter, but I think Kenny Robertson is looking to kind of make the move from the bottom end of the top 20 toward the top 10 at this point in his career.
So what do you think is next for him then? Is this like a decent win at all, or is this just one that kind of keeps him treading water, I guess is the best way of saying it?
I'd like to see him tested against someone on the fringe of the top 10. At the end of the day, now he's getting toward a point in his career too where it's kind of make a break. He needs to face the big guys or kind of go home.
Okay, all right. So I'm not gonna sit around on that one too much. The fight I really want to talk about is the Uriah Faber and Alex Caceres matchup. I really felt when this fight was made, I was like, what are they doing to Alex? Because he was on a good run, but everyone knew what was going to happen coming into this fight. I mean, he's going from beating the guys he was beating to fighting probably one of the best fighters who hasn't ever held a title in the UFC in Uriah Faber. So I'm not surprised that he did get choked in the third round there. What did you kind of expect? Did you see anything that caught your attention, or was this kind of like a run-of-the-mill fight?
Yeah, it was to be expected. I think it's now Uriah Faber something like 20-0 in non-title fights. Um, Caceres is a good fighter. He's got some potential, but he's not on Uriah Faber's level. There's not many in the UFC who are on Uriah Faber's level. You know, he's only ever been beaten by the best, and Bruce Leroy is far from the best at this point in his career. I think it was a fight too soon for Bruce Leroy, and I think it's going to hinder his development in the future. Just getting dominated by a guy like Uriah Faber, but credit to Faber, he had a guy in front of him and he just ran through him like he was supposed to do, and that's what Uriah Faber does best.
So what do you think is next for both of them? I was talking to Michael Ford earlier in the week, and we were discussing the TJ fight against Faber. Is that something that would interest you? Would you be willing to watch if they actually fought each other?
Yeah, it's going to happen. It's going to be like the poor man's Rashad Evans v. John Jones, you know, one of those made-up feuds that's going to be marketed to get somewhat decent pay-per-view buys. I think TJ's at this point is the more assured fighter. You know, his striking is significantly better than Uriah Faber. I think the only reason I'd favor Faber in any way is his submission game is slightly better than Dillashaw's, but Dillashaw's wrestling I think is adequate to counter to counter Faber, and I think it'd probably end up looking like the first Helen Burrell v Uriah Faber fight.
So what happens? You just mentioned that it would be kind of like a made-up feud. You don't think that there would be any seriousness behind that? I think that there would be if it came down to it. I know I was listening to TJ talk on the Sure Dog Radio Network. I think the weekend after he won the title, where he was saying that him and Faber fight in the practice room all the time. So it's time to get paid for it. That's one way of looking at it. But you don't think that there would be any animosity at all between those two guys if they did actually fight?
There'd be some animosity, but at the end of the day, these two guys are seasoned athletes. They're two of the best martial artists in the world, and I don't think at that level many guys take it personally. You know, it's just competition to them. I really don't believe the Faber would be too pushed either way, because as you said, they probably go at it full in the gym anyway.
How would that fight go if it was made? Like, what do you think would happen?
I think TJ would probably take a decision like the first Henan Brow fight against Faber. He'll probably leg kick him, body kick him, and just really stay on the outside and get the decision.
Would you have said that same thing like 6 months ago, though? Like, that's my question. I feel like a lot of people would mimic that decision there, but maybe six months ago they wouldn't have said the same thing.
I most definitely wouldn't have said the same thing 6 months ago, because 6 months ago I hadn't seen TJ Dillashaw put on a performance against Henan Brow. There were still so many questions to be asked about TJ Dillashaw. If he had the heart, if he had the composure to stick a championship fight. And you know, he showed that against Henan Brow. He showed that mentally he's there. He showed it against Mike Easton. He showed it against Austin Sau in a fight I thought he won, and against Hugo Viana too. He's just shown an evolution of his game. He's shown how confident he is, and he's shown that nothing phases him. And I don't think Uriah Faber would phase him now, and especially after watching the Henan Brow fight, that's definitely changed my opinion.
Okay, so let me ask you this then. Let's talk back about Alex. What do you think is next for him? Like, where does he kind of fall in the rankings after dropping that fight?
Oh, it's a hard one for Alex. I'm really not too sure what would be good for him right now. Maybe a Brian Caraway fight could be interesting, but you know, he's kind of in a bad situation because he had such a good run going that the UFC could have used to market him better. After getting finished like that, I don't know really what's next for him. I think I'd like to see a Brian Caraway fight, but the UFC obviously doesn't like matching guys coming off losses, so I don't think we'll see that happen.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea there too as well. Even though Alex is coming off of that loss, I think that Brian's on a pretty good run of his own, and that's another storyline with Team Alpha Male as well, because he used to train with both of those guys up there too. So that's another storyline that could kind of be developed. But I wasn't too surprised with how the fight went. Like I said, as soon as it was made, I was like, this is going to completely burn Bruce Leroy in every sense of the case because I don't, I didn't see any way he would have won that fight because Faber just doesn't make mistakes too often, and even when he does, you have to be at the top of your game to kind of pounce on it. So I'm not too surprised with what went down there, and it kind of sucks for him because he was kind of fed to the lions a little bit too early, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, the thing with Uriah Faber is Uriah Faber is one of the UFC's few cash cows. He sells pay-per-views and he's very popular. The UFC don't risk him in non-title fights, in my opinion. I don't think they want to see Uriah Faber getting beaten because, as I said, Uriah Faber is somewhat of a draw, and the UFC is lacking draws at the minute.
Hmm. Did you see that tweet that was sent to us about Faber and Ludwig though, about there being bad blood there? Isn't Dwayne Ludwig still going to corner? He's going to corner Chad Mendez when he fight. Well, I guess he was going to corner Chad Mendez because that fight with Jose Aldo is off now. So and I know he's still working with Danny Castillo. 'Cause I saw some images of those two still working together. So if he's still working with a bunch of the guys from Team Mafia, do you think that's a storyline that could be pushed?
Yeah, you know what it is? I think Faber's jealous of all the credit that Ludwig's getting. When you think about TJ Dillashaw, when TJ Dillashaw was just a rookie, Uriah Faber was the one honing his skills in the gym. Uriah Faber was coaching him, training him, bringing him in when he was still green and teaching him the ropes. But now that Bang Ludwig's on scene, Bang is the one who's getting all the credit, and I think that's really getting to Uriah Faber, and that's why I see uh, some problems. But yeah, there's some bad blood, but at the end of the day, as I said before, the two guys, they're pro athletes. I don't think that they'd make it personal.
Yeah, I don't think it would. Yeah, see, I'm not going to go as far as to say that because I think that when we think of something that's personal, it's taken the wrong way. Yeah, it will be business on one end of it, but I still don't think that their relationship will ever be the same after fighting each other for a world title, especially with what that would mean to Faber's legacy. Again, as I pointed out, he's probably the best fighter that the UFC has had that has never won a title. He kind of carried the lighter weight divisions for years when he was in the WEC, and then once the momentum carries where the UFC kind of brings him in. Once all of that happens, he's kind of pushed to the uh, to the to the sidelines in a sense. So I think
Yeah,
that
I
there is something there.
yeah, well, I kind of view any of the featherweight and bantamweight fighters who were champions in the WEC as former UFC champions. Because at the time they were the best bantamweights and featherweights in the world because UFC didn't have to offer that. Um, So in my head, I consider Uriah Faber champion. He was a world champion. Just because the UFC weren't the organization promoting it, he was a world champion. He was definitely for a period the undisputed best featherweight in the world. And I think when all is said and done, Uriah Faber retires, he will be remembered as a champion.
Does he go into the Hall of Fame now?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, I definitely agree with the same thing. I think he's had a career now, even if he never fought again, that he would deserve to be in an MMA Hall of Fame, let alone the UFC Hall of Fame. But that's another whole other conversation within of itself. So let's jump on the main card. What about the Russell Duane versus Marcus Brimage fight? Now, see, earlier in this week, I made the mistake of picking Marcus Brimage. I don't know why I did, but I've never really been a fan of his. But I just jumped on that selection there. What was your thoughts about this fight? It was a split decision. Did you agree with how the judges went?
Yeah, I think the decision was probably right. It was an okay fight. It was nothing special. At the end of the day, like there's not much to be said about the pair. I don't think either one is going to make any remarkable impact on the UFC. And as I said, I read something earlier on that 200 people have debuted in the UFC and this year will debut this year. And it just kind of shows that the talent in the UFC is kind of watered down. 5 years ago, guys like Marcus Brimage aren't going to be UFC caliber fighters, but now with the amount of cards and the amount of events that the UFC just shows that these guys that are mid-level fighters are getting onto the big show, and I think it's an absolute disgrace that these two guys were on the pay-per-view portion of the biggest card of the year as well.
You said it was a disgrace. Do you think that they should have been off the card and the Uriah Faber fight should have been there instead?
Man, I don't think these guys should be in the UFC. Call me a purist, but I don't believe that half the guys in the UFC deserve to be in the UFC anymore. It's an oversaturation on the cards. They've brought in so many B-level fighters to fill the void of these endless Fight Pass and Fuel TV shows that nobody wants to see. Most of these guys don't even deserve to be in the UFC, in my opinion. Guys like Brimage, man, he's mildly skilled. He was 6-2 coming into the fight. He had nothing there. Maybe Russell Dwan has something to show in the future, but again, from what I've seen of him so far, he's not amazing either.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely that issue with them having to fill up all of these cards with fighters such as this, but I don't really have too much of a problem with that. And what I mean is because I look at a lot of these smaller cards as the UFC versions of maybe like Wednesday or Friday night fights. The issue is that they're promoting these bouts and they're in such a way that we're supposed to believe that these are like the greatest fights that they could put together for us in a sense, and that's where that gray area comes into play because you don't see Wednesday night fights or Friday night fights promoted in that same session. It's very clear that those fights are kind of like the developmental athletes, and these guys should be promoted in the same way. Maybe not put as a opening fight for a UFC event, but they should definitely be put out there as a they should have their opportunity to grow as well.
Yeah, I think the dwindling numbers of pay-per-view buys are kind of it's a result of the watered down cards. It really is. A lot of people are saying that fans are losing their interest in the fights. What the problem is that the new fans aren't building up followings of fighters because there's so many different fighters that guys don't get a chance to build up a following. There's so many events now with so many new fighters that it all kind of blends into one bland, monotonous string of fighters that nobody cares about. Back in the older days, maybe there was one show a month, and you'd get to build up a liking and kind of a relationship with the fighter, and you'd follow him through his career. But now it's really hard to keep up to date. Even I find, like, I'm an MMA fanatic, and I find it hard to keep up to date with the UFC roster. Now, can you imagine if you're a guy who casually watches MMA? You're not going to know half these fighters, and you're going to lose interest. Then when the pay-per-view comes up and it's what, $50, $60, you're not going to want to buy it because you won't know these guys who are fighting.
And yeah, that's definitely a issue that they're having to deal with now. I still think that there's value there if these fights are kind of put together in a solid fashion. I was listening to Show Dog earlier this week, and someone brought up the idea of if these fight pass type cards can presented as the same way that the WWE does with Monday Night Raw. It's a weekly event, and if it was like 3 to 4 fights per night every week, I think people would watch that in a sense that they're getting to know who these guys are who aren't pay-per-view worthy at the time, who aren't title contenders. It's a way to kind of get a following behind them before they get put onto the main screen. Like this is someone. Imagine if Matt Brown fought on a in a situation like that where his fights were represented like every 3 months or whatever on like a Friday night event or something like that, and he got a following behind him to the point where okay, next year he's an opening bout on a UFC pay-per-view event. Then after that, he's made with the co-main event, and then the fight with him and Robbie, let's say, is for the title is like the main event. I feel like that's a way to kind of build steam behind these guys who are growing in the sport, but shouldn't be put in such a primary spot so early.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I think one of the joys of the UFC when it was in its pay-per-view prime was the fact that it was something that you couldn't watch every week. It was something that stood out, it was something that all your friends would gather around once a month, maybe twice a month to watch a big fight card. But now it seems like there's fights maybe twice every weekend. There's some sort of MMA event on TV, and for a lot of guys it's kind of lost its draw. It's not new anymore, and it's not exciting. It's the norm. It's like boxing. Nobody wants to watch boxing anymore because it's just a complete oversaturation of no-named guys fighting each other every week on TV.
I don't know if I truly agree with you on that because I know I watch it still just because I like to see some of these younger guys coming up, and that's just because I love the sport. But I still think that there is some value there. But we kind of got sidetracked there, talking about UFC 175. Let's keep going there and let's talk about this Uriah Hall and Thiago Santos fight. What was your thoughts on that there?
Man, Uriah Hall is as tough as nails. Fighting through that with a broken toe, it's kind of answered all the questions that people have had. Has Uriah Hall got hurt? Yes, he does. He's got the determination to keep coming forward, and I think that was really the performance he needed. I think it's the adversity that he had to come through. It's going to make him a better fighter in the future.
How far do you think he goes though? I know it was so many things were expected of him. He was expected to be an Ultimate Fighter. He didn't. He struggled in some of his fights coming out of the show, so he hasn't been that killer that everyone thought he was going to be. What do you think is going to happen with him in the octagon?
It's a hard one to predict. I think his next performance is going to be the teller. He looked good against Chris Liebman in the fight before, and he looked good against Thiago Santos last night. But I think now he needs to make the big statement. Sink or swim now. He's made the building blocks. He's shown that he is of some talent. But now it's the time for the trademark performance. It's the time for the big knockout to begin to capitalize on the following that he got from the Ultimate Fighter before it starts to dwindle away.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think it's time for him to kind of start putting it together as it should be said. I think he is definitely a good fighter. He's someone that I believe is worth watching. But I'm just concerned with what's going to happen with him long term.
No, definitely agreed.
So let's talk about the co-main event here. And man, I'm. It's almost like before the UFC 175 win, you know how they do like little montages where they're showing the fighters leading into the bout. And I always get impressed with watching Ronda Rousey's judo. They always show like maybe 3 or 4 clips of when she was throwing Misha Tate around, and just how like beautiful though. And I'm not saying that because it's a woman doing the technique, but just because she's doing them like so perfect. Like the founders of judo, I'm guessing the way they envision these throws to look when used in competition, that's how they look when Ronda Rousey uses it in MMA. And what she did to Alexis Davis was like, I just had to laugh and shake my head.
Yeah, man, it was crazy. I think you hit the nail on the head. I think judo, aesthetically speaking, is the most beautiful martial art form. I think it's so amazing to watch a throw in motion, and I think watching Ronda Rousey fight, it's getting better and better. Every time she fights, it looks less sloppy and just more close to perfection. I think last night it was a short performance, but it was probably her best performance to date. Her hands looked better in the brief display we got on them. Her ground and pound obviously looked more dominant, and her judo looked as sharp as ever.
So, what is next for this woman? Like, do you honestly think that Cyborg Santos or Holly Holm could defeat her? Yeah, I wasn't keen on the idea to begin with, but this fight right here. Actually, I think this fight is going to do 2 things, and I'm working on a piece about this as well too. I think this puts the onus on the UFC that they have to bring in either Cyborg or Holm or both of those 2 ladies as soon as possible to kind of create a fight that makes people want to watch Rousey to begin with. Same thing with Gina Carano. Even though that's not a competitive fight, it's a fight that would get people to watch. Because what they're in danger of doing is they're in danger of having a champion that blows the doors off of everyone in such a way that people don't want to watch anymore. So I think that that's a danger zone that they're stepping into there. And they could also, I mean, this is something else that could kind of force Rousey out of competition sooner rather than later if she's not being challenged in a way that she sees fit.
Yeah, I think Ronda Rousey needs a big fight. It's just what sort of big fight? Does she need the challenge of Cyborg? Does she need the big pay-per-view fight that Gina Carano could give her, or does she need the new up and coming challenger like Holly Holm? Personally, I don't think Holly Holm is anything for her. I think in terms of skills, the only one that I have any question that could maybe beat her is Cyborg. That's the fight I want to see. The Gina Carano fight would also be good for Ronda Rousey, but I think really now we're getting to the stage that I want to personally see. I want to see Ronda fight maybe Gina Carano or Holly Holm first, and then Cyborg in a big event, maybe Super Bowl weekend.
What do you think about the I can't think of her. I think her last name is Correa or something like that. The woman who just defeated one of like the female four horsemen or whatever they're being called. Um, what do you think about her? Because Ronda Rousey actually called her out for what she did after she defeated one of their stable members. She's fighting Shayna Baszler next. I can't. Her name escapes my memory right now. But what do you think about her if she continues to build up that run and they can kind of build this storyline into the actual fight?
Yeah, she's a quality fighter. She bet Julie Kedzie, and it was Jessamine Duke she bet in the last appearance. She's fighting Shayna Baszler at UFC 176. Shayna will be a stiff test. Shayna's a veteran, and I think, I don't know, if she beats Shayna, I think she could be potentially one fight away from a title shot. I think, if Ronda wants to fight her, Ronda will fight her because the UFC will do what Ronda says. She's at that stage and that level of stardom now, I think, that she calls the shots in a sense. So I think that fight is definitely a possibility. But again, does she have anything to bring to the table against her? Probably not. She won a split decision against Julie Kedzie. Julie Kedzie, no disrespect, but she's nowhere near Ronda Rousey level. So I really do think Ronda's leaps ahead of these guys. I think everyone who's getting the title shot against Ronda doesn't seem to have a great performance beforehand. It seems as if they struggle and then get a title shot against Ronda and then look bad against Ronda as well. Like there's
So what
no
do you,
clear number one contender. There's no girl that's knocking people out, that's getting decisive finishes. There's no one that people can believe is going to beat Ronda.
so what if Sarah McMahon blows the doors off of the former Invicta champion? She's welcoming into the UFC. Like, is that a fight that you think is worth making again? Like, the first one, it was kind of, I don't want to say controversial in the way it ended, but it definitely left some question marks. There was some room there that the fight could have been kept going. Do you think that that's a fight that's worth watching again? Is the Sarah pose enough of a challenge to Ronda a second go time, like a second time around, that you would want to watch that fight?
Man, I'd love to see that fight turn into a grappling match. I'd love to see grappling exchanges between the two Olympians, but it's so soon and the performance was so one-sided that I think it would be very, very hard for the UFC to market it. I think at the best of times it's hard to market opponents against Ronda Rousey because people know she's going to win. At this point, it's gone to like the old Mike Tyson days where you tune in, but that Tyson's going to win or Ronda's going to win in this situation. I think the fans are really looking for a viable contender. I think Cyborg is really the only option in that sense.
Okay, I mean, like I said, I don't, man, I think Cyborg is taken down. He's armbarred. I'm not even gonna lie, right out the gate. I think it doesn't last. I don't think it goes out the first round. That's just my opinion. I understand that Cyborg has or had the power to knock girls out. I don't think she's looked the same since then. But I would be surprised if she hits Ronda one, two, three times and puts her out before Rousey can get her hands on her and send her for a ride. That's just my opinion. I think that that's how that fight would go. Take her
Yeah,
down and she would submit her. I understand that Cyborg is a world champion jiu-jitsu player, but that was in the gi and that was at purple belt as well too. So this is kind of a totally different realm of fighting. So I don't think that fight really goes the way a lot of people are playing it
yeah,
out.
agreed. And I think if the UFC signed Cyborg, it kind of contradicts their whole drug policy because Cyborg is a known cheater. They can't fire Chael Sonnen who cheated and hire another cheater and give her a title shot. Especially what Dana has said about Cyborg in the past.
Well, I think the difference with this situation is that since Cyborg has gotten caught, she hasn't been, caught again, and they have been known to give they're selective with giving their fighters second chances. Honestly, there's rumor going around that they may try to find a way to bring Chael back, so I wouldn't be surprised if they did that. But they do find ways to bring athletes back after a certain amount of time, so I wouldn't be surprised if they did the same thing here. Um, and also, I just lost my train of thought there. But I think this is more of a fight that they need to make business wise.
Yeah, but I think taking testosterone as a man is one thing, but when you're a woman and you take testosterone, it changes your body composition completely. It changes the density of your bones. It changes your muscle tone permanently, and I think that really does give Cyborg an unfair advantage.
That's not what she failed her drug test for though. She failed her drug test for a diuretic because she was having a hard time making weight, and I think it was Winstrol or something like that. That's actually a illegal diet supplement that helped her make weight for her fight. She wasn't busted for taking testosterone.
Winstrol is an oral steroid. I'm not sure if that's what she popped or if Winstrol's a steroid.
For some reason, I feel like she got caught for a diuretic. We'll have to check that out. But I think that that's what she got busted for. She was having an issue making weight consistently, so she got caught for that. I may be wrong, but for some reason, I feel like that's what she got caught for taking.
Yeah, no, it was a positive steroid test.
Okay.
Telling lies again.
Huh?
You're telling lies.
Oh, me? Maybe I don't know. Maybe I was just trying to tell lies away so that they can make the fight. I'm not.
I think Theodore has to pay some sort of money to get this fight made.
Okay. So let's take a step forward from there and let's talk about the main event. What was your thoughts? Let's before we talk about the fight itself. What were your thoughts coming into this fight? Did you think that it was going to go the way it did? And do you honestly believe that Machida was more of a challenge that he was kind of being made out to be for Chris Weidman?
I personally thought that Weidman would Machida. I felt he'd probably take Machida down and work for a choke, but I was pleasantly surprised by how competitive the fight was. Chris Weidman's stand-up really impressed me. Machida did what Machida does. It's very entertaining to watch. It's very artistic. Obviously, he wasn't at his best, but like the fourth and fifth round of that fight were two of the best rounds I've seen in a long time, and I really enjoyed the fight personally.
Yeah, I definitely enjoyed it as well. I think that, excuse me, coming into the fight, I felt like a lot of people were sleeping on Lyoto. Even just some of like the casual fans, like some of my friends who I talked to in passing, they automatically figured that since Weidman had beat Anderson Silva twice, that he was just going to walk through Lyoto and just basically steamroll him. And I was trying to explain to them that this fight may not go that way, especially since a lot of people have a hard time dealing with Lyoto's movement and his striking. But Chris Weidman definitely did a very good job. He set the tone with the first two rounds in this fight, and I think that's very important because Machida is a slow starter, but he does enough a lot of times early in the fight that makes it questionable as to who won that round and who didn't. But Weidman didn't play that game with him. He went out there and he made sure that the rounds 1 and 2 were his to take.
Yeah, I think right now Chris Weidman has shown that he's a very short striker. He's shown that coming forward he is very, very good. Anderson Silva and Machida are both counter strikers, and he's shown he can do what he can put on the pressure and he can force mistakes. But what I want to see is Chris Weidman face a guy like Vitor Belfort or maybe even Jacare, guys that come forward and see how Chris does on his back foot. I think Vitor poses a lot of questions. His hand speed is significantly better than Anderson and Lyoto, and I think his aggression could make the fight interesting. And I see the same thing in Jacare. Jacare throws bombs and he always comes forward. So they're two fights I'd like to see next for Weidman.
Yeah, I think he has to definitely make one of those fights soon. Do you think that Vitor is still a challenge to him, knowing that he's not going to be able to take CRT? That like this fight has to be made in like somewhere like Las Vegas or even New Jersey, somewhere along those lines. And if that is done, do you think that this is like enough of is Belfort going to be enough of a challenge without being allowed to take CRT at this point in time?
Yeah, I think Vitor Belfort's technical enough as a striker that TRT or no TRT, there's a chance he can knock out Weidman. He has some of the most powerful hands and he's some of the best footwork in the division. I think even on the ground he's very aggressive. So I think there's definitely an opportunity for him to win. I think it would be an interesting fight regardless. But again, I can't see how he can be licensed to fight anytime soon because he has failed the drug test since he was last licensed.
Yeah, that's going to have to be a question that's answered and answered soon by the UFC because if not, like how can they how can they claim that they're cleaning up the sport if they're not doing what's necessary 100% of the time? Like if he puts them in a situation where he doesn't seem you know it doesn't seem like the situation on the up and up, they have to cut him. Like this would be what their third or fourth time dealing with this situation with him, and they would have to let Vitor go, even though he will be automatically, almost immediately snatched up by either the World Series of Fighting or Bellator. They almost have to do that just because they have to kind of keep that trend going for the sport.
Yeah, it's a hard one. UFC has kind of put itself in a position now with Fire and Chael. They're going to have to do that with every fighter that tests like that. And it's hard because, Vitor's a known cheater. He's cheated numerous occasions during his UFC career. It's the same with Josh Barnett. Both of these guys should realistically not be fighting in the UFC if they're going to keep the illusion of the UFC being a clean company. They need to get rid of the cheaters. I think I think it's a very hypocritical not to have Vitor cut, and to mark him as a title fighter in his next fight would be very bad for the company. But it's hard because obviously skills wise he is one of the best fighters.
So let me ask you this: Are you one of those people who kind of subscribes to a one strike rule and you're out? Because you mentioned Josh Barnett as well. Josh
Yeah,
failed one test under Zuffa, then he failed the second one with Affliction, and he basically single handedly destroyed that whole promotion. So are you like a one strike and you're gone type of guy, like, or do you think there needs to be some leeway when it comes to drug tests?
well, I'm pretty much the opposite. But personally, I think that all drugs should be legalized in terms of fighting. I have no problem as long as it's fair for everyone. But equally, if it's fair for everyone, once you test once to be on steroids and it's illegal, you should be fired and never let back into the UFC because it's not fair for everyone. It should be the same playing field all the way through. Either everything's allowed or one strike and you're out. It can't be this line that gets crossed where a guy fails a drug test, gets a 6 month suspension, and comes back and fights like a number one contender fight. Because even though he took the 6 months off, that guy has had steroids in his system. That guy has had the ability to train harder over the last year. Even when he's suspended, he could be on steroids. There's no random drug test when you're suspended. So these guys can take steroids, train as hard as they want, and then come back and fight. It's bullshit. They should be. It's either everything goes or nothing goes. There's no gray area.
Did you see Rousey's statements? I want to say it was this week, or maybe it was the week that Cho got cut, about how she feels like it should be a 8-year ban, like they do with the Olympics. How if you fail a drug test, you're gone for 8 years. Do you think that would be? Do you think that's enough of a deterrent for some of these fighters? Because man, 8 years out of their whole career, that's almost their whole career basically. Like imagine if like a 20-year-old fighter failed a drug test, they're not fighting again until they're 28 years old. So do you think that that's enough of a deterrent to keep these guys away?
I think it should be a ban for life from the UFC straight away. Uh, I think it just should be right. You failed your test, you're fired. Go fight somewhere else. That should be it. And I think that would soon deter people from cheating.
Now hold on, you said go fight somewhere else. So if they fail a test in the UFC, and then they should be allowed to get signed by like the World Series of Fighting, you're saying, or should they be banned? Period.
Go fight in Japan like they used to, man. Go to Pride, take all the steroids you want. Go fight in organizations that don't test. If you want to cheat all you want, but don't cheat in the UFC because we want to know that the UFC fighters are clean, and that's the way they should have it. And there should be the question mark raised about anyone who doesn't fight in the UFC then, as to if they are taking steroids. You know what I mean? I think it should just be like that.
Be mad at that. I feel about. I feel like I feel as if it's illegal, period, it shouldn't be done. Like there shouldn't be any gray areas. There shouldn't be, oh well, this guy took this, so we're gonna suspend him 6 months. This guy took A, so we're gonna suspend him 9 months. It should be a clear cut across the board situation. And I feel like the promotion itself has some say in how they handle that. Because, for example, they cut Nate Marquardt a couple years back for what he did with his TRT situation, and he almost ruined that UFC on Fuel, I think, that card, and they cut him right out the gate. They said he would never come back, but you see he's back already. And then they're cutting guys. They suspend. They allow some guys to be suspended. They cut others. So you're right. There needs to be some type of cut and fast, like dry rule. This is what's going to happen to you if you do fail a test. Year suspension, I wouldn't be too mad at that. 2 or 3 years, 8 years, I think that's a lot. But I think there's something needs to be done in one way, shape, or form.
That is very true. I think one of the main problems about that is in the mid 2000s and the early 2000s, there was kind of a testosterone culture within the UFC. The testing was lax, and there was rumors of lots of guys taking lots of banned stuff. The UFC weren't testing for HGH or EPO, and you see the guys that were going around with endless cardio from the EPO, and guys that all of a sudden got huge from the HGH. It happens. If the UFC weren't testing for it, do you think the guys weren't taking the EPO or the HGH? Of course they were. I think the problem is that a lot of the guys that were champions, I think even during that period, were on stuff, and that's where the trouble's coming. But there's even stuff now like SARMs, the performance enhancing drug, that's not tested for still. That's the one that they make in labs pretty much. That's not tested for. There's still performance enhancing techniques that aren't tested for at all in mixed martial arts. So there's always going to be cheaters. The Olympics, there's still guys who cheat. There's people who get caught every year in every Olympics for like performance enhancing drugs. There will always be a subsect of people who will try and cheat.
So let me ask you this then: are there any fighters on the UFC roster right now that you would be surprised if they failed a drug test?
The only fighter, would I be surprised if they fail a drugs test? Yeah.
Yeah, like if someone's name popped up and would you say, oh my God, I would have never expected him?
BJ Penn, and that's about it. Honestly, that's the only guy. Maybe no. I say BJ Penn. I say BJ Penn and Frankie Edgar. Both those guys, I think, throughout their career have shown to be clean. I think obviously Frankie comes from an area with the unregulated fight scene up in New York and New Jersey over the period. That was very very oversaturated with testosterone-laden fighters, but I think Frankie has kind of shown throughout his career that he kind of has the spirit of a fighter. He's always been clean, and you can just tell it by him that for him it's about competition, and I don't think he would cheat.
Okay, so like those are the only two. Man, I'm sitting here thinking myself, and I think maybe I would add those two names. Maybe someone like a Uriah Faber, or maybe a Demetrius Johnson, somewhere along those lines. Someone, maybe even a Dominic Cruz. I would kind of be shocked if they failed a drug test. Maybe not even, well, Dominic Cruz, with him coming back from so many different injuries, maybe something like that came up. But yeah, like there are relatively few guys on the roster where if they failed a drug test, I would be like, wow, this guy actually got popped for something. I would have never believed that.
Oh man, you better bet your ass that Dominic Cruz is on testosterone, and because he's going to be prescribed that to recover from all these surgeries. And that again brings up the question of, if fighters are injured, should they be allowed to take testosterone or banned anti-inflammatories during their rehabbing sessions? Should they be allowed to take performance-enhancing drugs when they're outside of competition and they're rehabbing injuries to aid quicker recoveries?
That's actually a good point there too. But we can't really say because we don't know. But like those are just some of the names that come. So let's talk about UFC. Actually, we still got a little bit more time. Let's look at the card that's going on tonight with the Ultimate Fighter 19 finale. What are some of your thoughts coming into that event?
Man, I'm so excited. We've seen BJ Penn, Frankie Edgar twice before, and twice it was a very interesting fight. The first fight I actually scored for BJ. I thought he did enough in Abu Dhabi that night to get the decision, but the rematch, Frankie Edgar absolutely obliterated him. He was amazing that night. And tonight is going to answer so many questions. Did BJ underestimate Frankie the second time around? Is Frankie just an all-around better fighter? Is BJ gonna rebound? Is he gonna come back? We've been saying this for years. Is BJ gonna to come back? Is he going to ever reclaim UFC gold? But now for the first time, he's made a concerted effort in coming back. He's not fighting as a fat welterweight. He's cutting down to featherweight. He's putting in the effort. He's been out in Nova União. He's been training hard. And this is kind of the accumulation of all his attempted comebacks come to one. This is his last chance, his last fight for redemption against Frank Yeager, and I think he's going to leave it all on the line. It's going to be an amazing fight.
See, I have an issue with that, because I feel like every time we talk about BJ Penn, it's always, oh, this is the BJ Penn that we've always seen. This is the BJ Penn that is finally putting effort into. I thought, like, that's the same thing they said about when he fought Edgar the second time. That's the same thing they said when he fought Matt Hughes. Same thing, same storyline when he fought Nick Diaz. Same storyline when he fought Roy McDonald. Like, when is enough enough? At what point do we say, okay, maybe his time has passed and it's time for him to maybe step away from the sport? But instead, every time he comes back, we're always being fed that storyline of this is the BJ Penn we've always wanted to see. I don't know if I can get behind that.
Well, I think BJ Penn has had his comebacks. He fought Nick Diaz and Roy McDonald. Those two guys are a lot bigger fighters than him. He was above his natural weight class. He looked decent against Matt Hughes, but at lightweight, he was always dominant, apart from Frank Yeager. That was the only time that he had ever really been given a good beating. And now at featherweight, are we going to see a rejuvenated BJ Penn? Are we going to see a fast and effective BJ Penn like we always have when he's fought at the lighter weight classes? At welterweight, BJ has never been impressive. He bet Matt Hughes, but that night was a massive upset. And Matt Hughes, for the title...
Matt Hughes had a paper chin at that time.
Yeah, I'm talking about even when BJ won the title against Matt Hughes.
Oh, okay.
That night, I think BJ was underestimated by Matt Hughes, and I think that's how BJ got the win. BJ has never been a welterweight, and the last few comeback fights at welterweight have shown that. Now, the thing is, at lightweight, who has BJ looked bad against? Frank Yeager once. At featherweight, we haven't seen BJ Penn. Could this be the best BJ Penn yet? Who knows? Probably not. But with BJ Penn, there's always the chance of something special. And if he fights Frank Yeager with full enthusiasm, I think it'll be a good fight. Frank Yeager has nothing to prove. Frank Yeager has shown time and time again that he's a warrior as well. And I think if this is going to be BJ's last fight, he deserves to fight against Frank Yeager, and I think Frank Yeager will give him a good fight for that.
Okay, I can agree with you on that aspect. I'm looking forward to the fight as well. I'm hoping that we do get a good bout across the board, which I know that these guys are well known for doing. I do expect it to be a good competitive contest. I'm just, kind of tired of that same BJ Penn storyline being fed to us over and over again. But again, I could be wrong. We may see something interesting come out of this main event, but you don't really know until the cards fall. Is there anything else that kind of stands out to you from this fight? I know myself, I'm looking forward to seeing Dustin Ortiz and Justin Scoggins. I'm looking forward to that fight. But is there anything else that kind of catches your eye from this season of the Ultimate Fighter? Also, let me add to that. I'm also interested in seeing Robert Drysdale compete as well too. But is there anything that stands out to you?
Yeah, the Robert Drysdale fight was what I was just going to mention. But I don't think we can talk about any fight now without steroids popping up. Drysdale recently failed a steroid test as well.
Yeah, he did.
So it's just like, but yeah, just with steroids out of the equation, Robert Drysdale is a fighter that I'm very interested to see. His BJJ is obviously amazing. I think his opponent is in for a shock. I think his opponent is a grappler by trade, isn't he? He's won his last two fights by submission. I think if he tries to grapple with Robert Drysdale, there's only one thing that's going to happen. He's going to be tapping. I'm very interested to see that fight. And as you said, the Scoggins fight, I'm very interested to see Justin Scoggins. Scoggins in his last performance was very impressive. He's got a lot of hype behind him. He's 22 years old. He's fighting out with American Top Team, which at the moment, in my opinion, are probably the best team in America producing fighters. So I'm really excited for that fight. Dustin Ortiz is a game opponent, and that should be an interesting one.
Good, definitely some good suggestions there. I'm looking forward to the whole card. I plan on watching it all myself. So it's a Sunday. It's one of those rare Sunday cards. So I plan on sitting in the house and enjoying that. What do you have coming forward from this week for MMARatings.net?
I'm looking toward UFC Dublin. We're getting there now. It's 2 weeks yesterday till the Octagon hits down in the O2 Arena in Dublin, and I'm preparing myself for that. I'm going to be there with Sportsnet, but I'll obviously still provide some content for MMA Ratings when I'm on my way there. I'm going to start working toward a piece on the history of Irish MMA. There's been a few that have come out recently, and I wasn't too happy with them. I've seen a few guys do some pieces that in all honesty, missed a lot of the picture of the early Irish MMA scene. That hopefully I want to paint a good picture of it. I want to do a good piece on that, and then maybe some interviews with the fighters toward fight week.
Okay, so that's actually something to look forward to. I think this is a quiet MMA week. I may be wrong. Do we have any big event other than let me look at this real quick. So we have yeah, it's actually a quiet fight week. We have the UFC Fight Night, Donald Cerrone and Jim Miller fighting next week. So this weekend is kind of quiet itself. So we don't have too much going on. So I will obviously I'll be doing a piece on fights to make from UFC 175 and the Ultimate Fighter 19 finale tonight, and I could probably pull a couple of other different storylines from some of the action we saw this past weekend. So be sure to check out MMAratings.net to see what we have going on.
Yeah, definitely. And I think a story that's going to come this week is UFC 176. I think Dana was very non-committal when he was asked questions if the event was going to be kept together, because obviously they've lost the main event with Jose Aldo being pulled up with injury. I think we're going to either see a random fight, two guys step up and take the main event, or we're going to see the whole event cancelled. But either way, I reckon it's going to be a big storyline. And I bet the UFC wish they had Chael Sonnen to stand up and take a fight against somebody now.
See, if the whole event gets canceled, I want Dana White to go on record and call Jose Aldo a fort killer, the same way he did everyone that deals with John Jones. Because Jose Aldo has a history of being hurt, so I want to see him go on the same type of rant that he did when he went after John Jones. If he doesn't, then that'll prove my point of him not liking doing business with Jones.
I don't think Dana White likes any of the UFC champions, to be honest. He's spoken about Henan Brown not deserving more money, and same with Aldo. With guys like with John Jones, obviously he's never been supportive of John Jones ever. It's the same with the other champions. Now maybe he sees a cash cow in Ronda Rousey and perhaps Chris Weidman, and he seems to support them a lot. But on the outside, there's no support he gets. He often remarks on how Demetrius Johnson can't draw pay-per-view buys. So I think he needs to support his champions more. I think, all in all, I agree that Jose Aldo was at fault probably for this cancellation. But if Dana criticizes him, it kind of perpetuates the self-loathing he has toward the company.
I mean, I think Weidman and Rousey are definitely cash cows for him. I think Cain Velasquez could be as well too. And I just don't think he likes dealing with the athletes who are kind of treating themselves as professional athletes should. I've said it plenty of times before. They have a short career. They don't have the whole window of opportunity to make the most money as they possibly can. So they have to do the best they can to maximize it. And now that he's dealing with some athletes that do that, I definitely do see there's some animosity brewing there. But as far as the people that he may consider cash cows, definitely Rousey, Weidman, and Velasquez will probably stand as the top three names at this point in time.
Exactly, man.
All right, great. So again, this is Raphael Garcia. This is Roy Billington. You can follow me at rgarcia2_ and then sports and on Twitter, and you can follow Roy Billington at Roy Billington, which is pretty simple. You can follow him on Twitter as well, and you can follow us as a whole at MMA Ratings Net on Twitter and on Instagram, and also be sure to check out the website at MMAratings.net. We have new content going up every day, so this podcast will be one of them. So be sure to always check out what we're doing. We try to keep things fresh and new for you. So I appreciate your time and for checking out the show today. Roy, it was great. Have a great one, man.
Yeah, cheers, man. Thanks.
No problem.
Bye.